Sound check 1, 2, 3, 4.
Good evening. My name is Nicole Ludden. I'm a reporter at the Arizona Agenda, and I'll be the moderator of this evening's debate. The Citizens Clean Elections Commission is the sponsor of this event. As the state's voter education agency, Clean Elections is the official sponsor of Arizona's debates, so voters have the opportunity to hear directly from the candidates, ask questions on the issues that matter most to them, and vote informed. All registered voters can vote in the general election, which will be held on November 5th. The voter registration deadline is October 7th, and early voting begins October 9th. Voters that are watching this debate live, you can submit a question at any time by emailing debates@kc-a.com. You can send a text to 408-840-8350, or you can call 480-397-1253. We may not get to all audience questions, but we will do our best. Tonight, we'll be hearing from candidates in Legislative District 7, which covers parts of Coconino, Navajo, Gila, and Pinal counties, and includes Apache Junction, Payson, Show Low, Globe, and the south side of Flagstaff, just to name a few areas. We will kick off the evening by hearing first from one candidate in the Senate, and that'll be about a 30-minute Q&A. Then we'll move to the House candidates and conclude around 7:30 p.m. Only the candidates currently debating will appear with their cameras and microphones on. Candidates, you will have 1 minute for your opening and closing statements and 1 to 2 minutes for your responses to voter questions. We encourage an open exchange of dialogue between opponents. If you feel the need to respond to another candidate's comments after they conclude speaking, you may do so. I may limit responses for time management purposes, and we remind the candidates and the audience that this is a respectful, courteous, and professional environment. Our goal tonight is to connect candidates and voters so our electorate may vote informed. So let's go ahead and introduce our candidates. Candidates running for the state Senate seat are Democrat Haley Creighton, who's with us tonight, and Republican Wendy Rogers, who was invited but declined to participate. In the House, voters get to vote for 2 candidates. Your candidates are Republican Walter Blackman, Democrat Kevin Chiquete, Democrat Nancy Hartle, and Republican David Marshall, who was invited but declined to participate. Let's go ahead and get started with our Senate conversation tonight. Ms. Creighton, you can start with your opening comments whenever you're ready.
Thank you so much, Nicole, and thank you to the Clean Elections Commission for hosting this event. My name is Haley Creighton. I am Arizona born and raised. I was born in Chandler initially, and I moved up to Flagstaff to attend Northern Arizona University about 6 years ago. I graduated with a degree in political science in 2022 and jumped right into politics pretty much from there. I was the campaign manager for Kyle Nitschke in 2022, who ran for the same exact seat in that year. And I am also currently the Northern Regional Director for the Arizona Students Association, where I spend my days registering and encouraging college students to vote, as well as advocating for issues with the state legislature that college students care about, things like affordable higher education and voting access, as well as training the next generation of student leaders. And I decided to run in LD7 because I have seen the effect of having a young candidate on the ballot in this district. I have seen how we can inspire young folks to get involved and to cast their ballots and to make sure their voices are heard. So I really want people like me and people in my community to feel heard and seen in this election. So again, thank you so much for allowing us to be here today.
Great, thank you. Let's kick off the conversation by talking about education. Do you believe Arizona's K-12 public education system as a whole is adequately funded? And if not, can you detail how the state should be making more investments?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the question. I do not believe that our K-12 public education system is adequately funded. I am a product of Arizona Public Schools myself. I also have 2 parents who are public educators, and I was on the front lines with them during the Red for Ed movement when we were out there advocating for more funding for our teachers, not only for their pay, but also for our classrooms, for our students to have more funding and more resources. We've seen the way that class sizes have been growing. We've seen the shortage of teachers in the state, and that's very much a funding issue. That's the fact that we don't have resources to keep our teachers and to keep them feeling supported in their classrooms and able to teach in the state. So I really want to see more of an investment in our public education system, especially through the budget. I think allowing for more money to go into the public education system and taking some of it away possibly from the ASA voucher program, which has been depleting a lot of our funding in the budget entirely, but also for specifically public education. I think that is something really important. We need to make sure we are funding our schools and our students who are the future of Arizona. I think that's an incredibly important thing to be doing.
Got it. Thank you. I'm glad you brought up empowerment scholarship accounts. They allow students to use taxpayer money to go to private schools, and lawmakers passed legislation recently to open up ESAs to all Arizona students. So do you think ESAs should be taken back in any way? Would you eliminate the program altogether if Democrats take control of the legislature? What would an ideal school voucher program look like to you?
Yeah, that's great. I firmly believe that the universal aspect of the voucher program goes too far. I think that ideally we'd want to take it back to prior to the universal standard, where it was for students who needed it. It was for students with special needs or with disabilities who needed extra. You need schools better equipped to handle those needs, as well as maybe certain other cases for students. I think I would not want to get rid of the voucher system because I think it is useful. I think there are students who need it, but I will say that I don't think we would need the ASA voucher program if our public schools were funded adequately. If we had funding to our schools that made parents feel more secure about keeping their kids in those schools, I think we need to support that system so that we can have special needs programs or disability programs in our schools, so kids do not feel like they need to go somewhere else to get adequate education, to get smaller class sizes, to get education they really deserve. So I think that that's part of the issue. But no, I do not believe as of right now of totally taking away the ASA voucher program, but scaling back the universal nature will absolutely help our budget. It will help provide more support to our public education system, and it will take taxpayer money out of private unregulated schools that do not have to accept your child anyway. Those places do not deserve to be getting taxpayer money in this way, in this to the scale, and I think so scaling it back is definitely needed at this point.
Gotcha. And you mentioned the issue with teachers leaving when we talked about public education. Would you vote to increase any kind of taxes to boost teachers' salaries?
Yeah, I think that I would. I think our teacher salary is very important. I think pay is one of the things that's going to keep teachers here, right? We are incredibly low in school funding, and that part of that funding, goes to teacher salary. I think doing some other things to keep teachers in Arizona is also really important. I think we have to support paying student teachers. We have to support our education system, our higher education system, to teach our future teachers and give them the education and the resources that they need to be able to stay here in Arizona. Yeah, I definitely support that. I think that's something that will keep our teachers here instead of having them go to California or somewhere else, and that will help our teacher shortage. We need well-educated, certified teachers to be in our classrooms.
Thank you. I want to move on to the border now. Very big topic.
Sure.
You supporting Prop 314, which would make it a state crime to be in the country legally and require local law enforcement to enforce that law, to put it very simply. And what do you think Arizona's role should be in fortifying the US-Mexico border?
Yeah, great question. I will not be supporting Proposition 314, which I know many are calling SB 1070 2.0, because I agree that it's harmful. I agree with the folks who say that it is harmful. I think bringing more criminalization and militarization to the border is not the answer. I think that makes our border communities feel unsafe, make our immigrants feel unsafe and not supported in this country, in this state. And that is not what we need to be doing. I think supporting our border communities, providing more aid and resources to folks at the border, providing a better pathway to citizenship for people trying to get into the country, those are all necessary. I think that'll make the issues at the border a lot more manageable, is providing, more support. And instead of, criminalizing people trying to provide aid down at the border, we should be helping with that aid ourselves. So that's kind of the role I think Arizona should be having, is helping the people in this state and the people, in our border towns try to excuse me, feel safe and to have support the people trying to come across the border as well. So they can come across easier, come across more legally, and feel supported once they get inside Arizona.
Okay, thank you. Speaking of the ballot, will you vote for the Arizona Abortion Access Initiative, which would legalize abortion past the current 15-week mark and allow abortions up until viability or longer to protect the health of a mother? What parameters on abortions, if any, do you believe could be justified?
Yeah,
Another
I love this question. I am fully in support of Proposition 139. I have been endorsed by Arizona List as well as Planned Parenthood Advocates of Arizona because of my history and my work on Proposition 139. I collected signatures for this myself, helped get it on the ballot, and I am fully in support of what this initiative does. I also firmly believe in going further if necessary. I think there are reasons people need abortions past that 22-week mark of viability, and that is often for the health of the patient, which is already mentioned in Prop 139. But there are other reasons and personal reasons that people might need to get that kind of care later down the line. And I think that's incredibly necessary. People should be able to make those decisions for their own health. And we want to go back to the standards we were at under Roe, right? I think a lot of people support that 22-week mark, support exceptions for past that deadline, for health, for other reasons as well. And yeah, I firmly support that. I also support expanding access here in Arizona, in northern Arizona, in such a rural part of the state, and the rest of the district as well. It's hard to access this kind of care, whether it's because of affordability or where clinics are in the state. There are not very many in this part of the district. There are none in northern Arizona, to my knowledge, that provide this kind of care. So trying to expand that so everyone can access this care if they need to is also on top of my agenda. So I really want to make sure that we're doing this first step of legalizing with Prop 139 up to that 22-week mark, with exceptions post that, as well as expanding access so anyone who needs to access this care in Arizona can and feels safe to do so.
Okay, thank you. I want to talk about housing here. What strategies do you support to decrease the number of people experiencing homelessness in Arizona?
Yeah, great question. I think there are a lot of methods to support in doing this, right? Whether it's increasing affordable housing, building new structures in cities to act as affordable housing. I think to address a lot of the issues that cause unhousedness in our state, things like wages and inflation and mental health resources and things like that. And I also really support giving power to the cities to help deal with this issue, right? Talking about, regulating short-term rentals is a very big thing here in Flagstaff, as well as across the rest of the district. And that is something that I've been, interacting with city council with quite a bit in this city, in Flagstaff. And they say they just don't have the power. The state has not given them the power to regulate this to the way that they need to. And I think that is something we know will drive down the price, will help drive down the price for housing, will help increase access to housing and to rentals and to things like that. That will help with the issue of unhousedness, right? There's not one magic wand that will fix this issue. It's kind of all those things combined, in my opinion. There's a lot of these things working together to help create this issue or make it worse. And I think that those are kind of the best solutions we can have right now, is to really give power to our local governments to help solve this issue in the way they see fit, because they are the ones who are in these communities. They are members of their communities, and they know how to fix this the best of their ability. So I think that's really a great place to start in doing all this.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned inflation there and how that plays a role in the housing market. And we here in Arizona are seeing some of the highest inflation rates in the country, although inflation is often discussed on a national level. What would you do if elected to help alleviate that burden on Arizonans?
Yeah, I think I've heard conversations around going after price gouging, and I really think that is something that is important in this talk of inflation. You're right that it is often talked about on a national level because that's where a lot of the power is to fight this kind of issue. But in Arizona, at least, to help alleviate the issues, there's other things we can do. We can talk about raising wages, see if that helps. I know a lot of folks maybe think that it doesn't. That's something we can try to do to help folks who are dealing with this issue, provide more resources to people, increase funding to public services, and access to, social services and things like that, that will help people who need access to either funding, food, housing, and things like that. So I think there's a lot of things we can do to alleviate the issue, maybe not necessarily solve it, but I think especially, however we can to go after the price gouging is a very important thing as well.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned when I asked about public school funding, carving out more room in the budget for that kind of money. We just came out of a legislative session with a big budget crunch. I'm wondering, especially in a district with many rural areas, do you have any plans to bolster funding for roads and other infrastructure in rural Arizona, specifically in Legislative District 7?
Yeah. For infrastructure, for sure. I think that's a very important thing we want to focus on in our rural community. I think something that comes to mind in that question is access to broadband. And I think that's something very important we want to see in this district in such a rural place. Obviously, roads, as well as the resources and equipment we need to fight, fires, to help with our water crisis, things like that. But I think the budget's definitely the place to do that, is to increase access to the funding we need to fight all these issues. And I think the fact that we are in a deficit is very hard right now. I think that's kind of why we've been seeing the flat tax that we have has been a big, hard hit on that, as well as, some of the funding to the ESA voucher program is what I firmly believe has been limiting our budget as well. So I think there are things we can do to help with the budget, and so we can prioritize spending on those infrastructure projects, like I mentioned, especially that broadband internet access for our rural district.
Gotcha. So would you support changing the flat tax?
I would, yes. I think that is a something harmful that puts more burden on lower income or working class families, and less of a burden on those who can afford to pay more taxes to help their communities. We are in these communities to help each other. That is what community is all about. So I firmly believe in changing that flat tax, yes.
Okay, thank you. I do want to touch here on public safety. Do you think the Department of Public Safety officers need a raise? And if so, how much?
Ooh, that is a great question. I would definitely want to look more into that to kind of see, but it is, it's in my opinion that we fund our Department of Public Safety and Corrections and things like that maybe higher than we need to, especially in terms of trying to help fund public education and other social services and things like that. So as of right now, I would say no. I do not think that they need a raise.
Okay, fair enough. Do you support efforts to require citizen or other third-party oversight mechanisms to investigate police shootings and use of force incidents?
Yes. Sorry, could you repeat the first part of that question, the question again?
Of course. Do you support efforts to require citizen or other third-party oversight boards to investigate police shootings and other use of force incidents?
Yes, I absolutely do support that. I think looking into these incidents is very important. This has been obviously a very hot topic in politics as of recently, but I think it's something we should have always been doing. I think that investigating these issues is something everyone should want, right? Because these issues should not be happening, and investigating why they are or what caused them is incredibly important. No one should be free from law or free from punishment when these kinds of things happen. So yeah, requiring investigation or some kind of oversight would be incredibly necessary.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any thoughts? Again, often this is talked about on a national level, but here in Arizona, on plans to curtail gun violence here in the state?
Yeah, I think there's a lot that can be done at a state level. You're right, it is talked about on a very national thing, but I know there's a lot that can be done at the state level. I think I've worked with groups like Moms Demand Action or Every Town for Gun Sense that have some wonderful ideas on what can be done here in Arizona to curtail gun violence. And some of that does include gun sense legislation. That includes things like requiring background checks or limiting the gun show loophole, which is prominent here in Arizona, where a background check is not needed to purchase a gun. I also think that things like, the name is slipping my mind, so I apologize on that. But there is legislation introduced in other states that would require the safe storage of guns in homes where minors are present. So things like that is something I would want to introduce in Arizona as well as just trying to keep guns out of the hands of violent criminals, domestic abusers, and other people who should not have guns, who are some of the causes of gun violence here in the state. So I definitely want to work on kinds of gun sense legislation that would protect the people in the state from gun violence.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to move on to water now? Very important, especially in rural Arizona. Supply is only one part of the water conversation. The other is conservation. You support additional regulations on water use, either by industry or by individuals?
Yes, I believe that I do. Especially for industry in the state, I think that some kind of oversight or regulation on water use is very important, especially when those industries do not come from Arizona. Sometimes we have, foreign industries or groups coming in and using our water resources. So regulating that, I think, is incredibly important. And I also think there's something to be said for talking to local communities to see, what kinds of solutions need to be done. There are groups that are on the ground doing this kind of work, working on conservation, especially in parts of the district that are indigenous lands. There's just a lot to be said for what's kind of the work that's been done and the research that's been done by a lot of these groups. So I think reaching out to them as well and kind of including them in this conversation about what works best for conservation and for helping our water resources is incredibly important because they're the ones that are fighting this fight every single day.
Yeah, and you sort of answered this question with that answer, but I do want to expand a little bit. Some rural areas want the state to step in and regulate groundwater, as you said, as their wells run dry. Do you support this idea of state regulation of groundwater, and how should the state manage groundwater?
Yeah, I definitely do. I support the regulation of groundwater usage. As of how, I'm not quite sure. I think that there are a lot of different ways that have been proposed. I believe the Governor Hobbs had a proposed water management plan, and I think that there are a lot of good things in that plan as well. But yeah, there's a lot to be said about just kind of seeing what's out there. So I maybe want to do a little more research on the options that are there. And again, working with some of the communities that maybe have the answer. They maybe have ideas on what can really be done to regulate that.
Sure. And last question here regarding water, because it is a very important topic to the state.
Of course, yeah.
The Colorado River system doesn't just support Arizona, but the entire West. How can Arizona work successfully with other states to manage water usage from the Colorado River system?
Yeah, I think definitely being cooperative with other states is something that's very important. I know, it's hard because we all have our own, ways of doing things and our own governments to try to, as city governments as well as state governments that work to regulate these sorts of things. But I think working together is really, really the way to do it. I think, because we all want the same thing. We all want access to water. We all want our rivers to stay plentiful and to stay beautiful. And I think that's working together with these other states is incredibly important. I really think that's all I really think I need to say about that is that it's important to just do that work and to not be the only ones working on trying to help the Colorado River system.
Okay, thank you. This has been a very big topic in Arizona news as of late, citizenship checks to vote. Do you believe Arizonans should be required to show a photo ID to vote, even when dropping off a mail-in ballot?
No, I do not. I do not believe that we need to do that. I am, I've been feeling the effects of these rules very recently. I do a lot of voter registration on our college campuses, and these are people who are eligible to vote in this state and should be able to cast their vote in the place that they live. But this is making that a lot harder for them to register to vote because they do not have an Arizona ID, right? And of course, there is a process to get an Arizona ID, but that makes it a lot more complicated for students to try to vote. So I do not think an Arizona an ID should be necessary to vote, especially on mail-in ballots, because it's something that makes it harder for vote, especially people who cannot afford to get an ID, people who maybe don't have time because they work so often. And again, a lot of our students, they live here 4 years. For 9 months out of the year, if they go home, a lot of them don't. So I think that we really want to make sure they feel included and they can use their voice where they go to school, where they live. And this makes it a lot harder. So I do not think that the ID should be necessary.
Thank you. Do you think there should be consequences for individuals or leaders specifically who promote unfounded claims about election fraud? And what should those consequences be?
Yeah. Yes, I do. I do think there should be consequences. I think that a lot of the claims around voter fraud and the supposed unsafety of our election system has brought a lot of mistrust in the system, a system that is incredibly safe. I have, spoken with a lot of people in Coconino who work on our elections. I've spoken with some statewide people who work in our elections as well. And I have full faith in our election system that there is no voter fraud or very incredibly limited voter fraud. Arizona's been doing mail-in voting for decades. This is something that people trust. This is something that our rural citizens need to be able to vote in time and when they can. And so I do think there should be consequences for people who spread um, unsupported claims about voter fraud. What those consequences should be, I think, is a little more complicated of a question. Whether that is, censure or if it's just, yeah, I'm not really quite sure what those consequences should be, but I do know that they definitely should exist, especially for elected officials. They are the ones that were elected because of our election system, and they deserve to be held accountable for the things they say that bring mistrust into the state and into their district about our safe and fair election system.
Okay, thank you. I want to round off the conversation here. We have a question from a voter who's watching. They said they see they have a Black Lives Matter sign behind you. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, I think the Black Lives Matter movement has been something that I've, watched as a young person growing up in this country, right? And I think it's incredibly important just to show that, of course, the Black Lives Matter, but just that this movement is important. This movement of talking about systemic racism and talking about the issues that a lot of people of color face in this country, in this state. I think that's what this movement does. It sheds light on those issues, and it says, let's fix them, let's acknowledge them, let's talk about how we have a history of racism in this country that has brought us to where we are today. Let's talk about those issues and what we can do to fix them. Instead of pointing a finger at anyone for causing these issues, let's work to fix them, and let's value the lives that are affected by a lot of these systemic racism in our system. Let's talk about these policies and supporting the people that are affected by those. That is what I believe. That is what it means to me. I know it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, and of course, I'm not a person of color, so I don't want to speak for anyone else or speak for this movement. But yeah, I think that's an incredibly important thing for me. Just the intersectionality of all of these issues to really acknowledge all of that in my politics.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you to the voter who asked that. I think that is all the time we have here. You can conclude with a closing remark whenever you're ready.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Nicole. Again, I really just do want to thank the Clean Elections Commission for hosting this event. I think it's wonderful to have a space where we can answer questions and talk to voters. That's always something very important to me. Like I mentioned before, I really want to show people like me, young people, women, queer people, that we belong in this space, that the issues that we care about deserve to be taken seriously, and that I want to bring a new and fresh perspective into the state legislature, right? I want to bring my history and my experience and my knowledge to fight for all of Arizona and to fight for people in my district. So again, thank you all. Thank you so much for hosting this today. And I'm excited to see the candidates who are up next.
All righty. Thank you so much, Ms. Creighton, for participating. We will now transition to the House debate in just a moment. Welcome back. We will now proceed with the debate for our House candidates. As a reminder, voters get to vote for 2 candidates for 2 House seats. The candidates are Republican Walter Blackman, Democrat Kevin Chiquete, Democrat Nancy Hartle, and Republican David Marshall, who was invited but declined to participate. The order in which the candidates will speak has been determined by alphabetical order by last name, starting for opening comments, and then we'll go in reverse order for closing comments. So, Mr. Blackman, will you start the opening remarks, please?
Well, thank you for having me here, and thanks for the candidates being here. Do appreciate Clean Elections for putting this on. I'm Walt Blackman, and I am a current member or former member of the Arizona House of Representatives, where I served on the Judicial Committee, also served Vice Chairman of the International and State Committee, and served 21 years in the United States military. I'm married. I have 5 children. I'm from Snowflake. And I'm running for office because I believe that it's time to bring some sense of normal back to our Arizona politics, back to Arizona, and back to Arizonans. It's important that our kids have the type of education that is needed. It's important that we have the type of government in Arizona that can answer and be accountable for the folks. And it's important that as legislators that we work in cohesive to get Arizona moving forward and to also make sure that we have the resources that we need in the great state of Arizona. So I look forward to a spirited debate, and thank you for having me here.
Thank you so much. Mr. Chiquete, whenever you're ready.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you guys for putting this on, and everybody that's had something to do with it. It's great to be able to get out and let our voices be heard for the voters here of Arizona. I am a lifelong Arizonan. I grew up in rural Arizona. I still continue to live in Arizona. I live in a small town called Kearney, Arizona, which is southeast of Globe. I'm running for office because I believe that as rural Arizonans, our needs are a little bit different than that of people that live in more metropolitan areas, and I feel that I'm a good representation of the rural middle class Arizonan, and that I could bring some value to the state legislature in helping to bring more of those services which we require in this sort of area, which our district is mostly comprised of. So again, I'd just like to thank everybody for being here. It's great to be here. So I'm looking forward to getting all this started. Thank you again.
Thank you. And Ms. Hartle, whenever you're ready.
Thanks, Nicole. Thank you for Clean Elections, and Brian and Tom and everybody that's back there, and the other candidates. I'm Nancy Hartle, Major Nancy Hartle, retired from the United States Air Force after 20 years of honorable service. Very proud to have served. I'm also a retired women's health nurse practitioner. And a lot of friends are saying, why in the world are you running at this difficult time in our history, in our country? And I said, I don't know. Why am I? Because I kind of feel this kind of a call to action, I think. And it's kind of, if you've ever heard of the butterfly effect, it's where the tiny little flap of the butterfly wing can cause all kinds of incredible things downwind, from a flap of a wing in Brazil to a hurricane in Texas. So I want to be that change agent. I want to be able to get into the legislature and help to do the things that we need to get done in our legislature. I would like to protect our rights. I'm very deeply distressed to see rights taken away. I would like to see religion kept out of kept in the churches and out of the legislature. I would like to see legislating in the legislature. Our decision on November 5th is going to be probably the most monumental of our lives. So we want to make sure that we are making the right choices. I'm ready, and I'm here and ready to roll up my sleeves and help in the legislature. I feel that all issues matter, from crumbling sidewalks to a possibly crumbling democracy. And I want to work hard on all of these issues for all the people in Arizona, with affordable housing, good paying jobs and opportunities, compassionate, cost-effective ideas for the immigration and border issues, water protection, air quality. We've got the second worst in the United States, and just many, many more issues. I want to be part of it. So hire Hartle on November 5th. Thank you very much.
Okay, Thank you so much. We'll now move into questions. A lot of these topics I discussed with the Senate candidate, but that's okay because they're important. Arizonans are suffering some of the highest inflation rates in the country. Do you have any plans to ease that burden on Arizonans as part of the legislature? Mr. Chiquete, you are up first for this question.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for that question. Well, one of the things I think about when I think about inflation, we suffer, especially in rural communities, from lack of jobs and lack of jobs that can support a family, that can support a household. And so I would like to see with more of those jobs that require skilled trades and that pay a good pay for Arizonans. I think right now we have the perfect opportunity with that, with the Infrastructure Act and the move towards green energy. All those things require jobs that don't necessarily need a college degree, but do provide skilled trades with quality, high-paying jobs that can sustain a family.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Hartle.
Inflation is a tough one, and it affects everybody around the, up and down the spectrum. So we all feel the crunch at the grocery stores, and I think that is going to take actually a federal kind of a thing to stop the price gouging by corporations, because I think that the pandemic got that all started because of the food chain problem, and I think the people have realized that they can charge those prices, and so we're all feeling the crunch at the grocery store. So I agree with Kevin that housing is one of the main issues. We have to work on lower cost housing, and there are many things regarding lower cost housing. If you want me to go into actually lower cost housing about this, we need more, we need more apartments and duplexes and triplexes, a broader kind of a more bold and ideas of how to do creative housing. And we talked earlier too about, part of this, the issue of homelessness and, that kind of thing, and everybody being broke, basically. It's got to do with mental health too. And we really need mental health help. And years ago, mental health institutions were kind of taken off the board here. And I think probably we need something like that to help the homelessness situation. So just in general, I think improving jobs. And then there's so much that we need. We know we have a lot of money that's come into the state, and Kevin spoke to that. We have to utilize that correctly. We do need broadband out in the rural areas, but to do that, we need electricity first. And there are about 30% of the Native American reservations that do not have even electricity yet. So we have to get that. And there's so many different things with transportation that we need to do and so forth. So it's a myriad of issues that's all around inflation, I think. So I guess that would be my answer.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Blackman.
Well, that is a great question. And I think we need to have more solutions when we're talking about inflation. And some of those solutions, and again, this is a federal issue. However, it does affect us at the state, particularly when we are managing and wrestling with the state government or the state budget. So we need to take a look at the monetary policy adjustments. And I would hope that our folks in Congress would be able to take a look at that. We also need to take a look at tightening the money supply. There's a lot of money that's left in the economy because of COVID. That is also a reason why we are having this inflation issue that we are seeing not only in Arizona, but around the country. The supply side reforms, we need to make sure that, particularly after pandemics that we have reforms in place that's going to put some guardrails up on our supply side. And by doing that, it's a possibility that we can drive down some of the inflation. Now, one of the big issues with inflation, and I think folks already know this, and I'm just speaking to the crowd on this, is the central banks and the Fed. The Fed can lower or raise their interest rates and adjust inflation in the economy. So it's really based on a federal level, them actually doing their job and then laying out some of those solutions that I've just mentioned here. Arizonans are hurting. When folks are trying to decide whether or not they're going to put food on the table or they are going to buy their medicine or put fuel in their vehicles, that is an issue. And as Arizonans, particularly elected leaders, we need to have solutions and not just bringing problems to the table.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad you brought up medicine. While we're on the topic of inflation, survey respondents to a poll conducted by Clean Elections regularly cited prescription drug prices as a major political concern for their households. A few of you mentioned how this is a federal issue that could perhaps be solved best at the federal level, but what state actions do you think could help alleviate prescription drug cost, if any? Ms. Hartle, you're up first for this one.
That's an excellent question, and I wish I had an excellent answer for it. I really don't know what we can do. Maybe education for the public, helping them to realize that generic drugs are just as good as brand name drugs in most cases. So if they're trying to get, generic, they can probably get it at a way cheaper price. That's one thing. Educating them about some of the things that are available, such as GoodRx and those kinds of things. I guess those would help. I don't know if we can do legislation to curb this thing. I know that isn't a plan for the Democratic Party nationally. Right now, we've got a $35 a month. I think it's a month for insulin for elderly, but they're going to work on doing that across the board, really negotiating prices for everybody. And that's what we have to do. I know a lot of people actually go down to Mexico and get their medications here from Arizona and so forth. They cross over the border and go down there and get them. And it shouldn't have to be that way. We can see across the board, the United States is paying in some situations 10 times more than other countries. It's just ridiculous. So hopefully we can come to something like that. But so far as statewide legislation, I guess once I get in and become a legislator, that would be something to look into, but I'm not really aware of what a legislator could do for something like that other than what I just mentioned. So that would be about it, all I can say.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you bet.
Blackman, you're up next.
First of all, Big Pharma has a big play in this. And again, this is a federal issue that state legislators at our level, particularly in my experience, that we cannot wrestle with because we don't have the authority to be able to negotiate on our behalf or other states' behalf on pharmaceutical issues and problems of that sort. However, it was mentioned about going down to Mexico, and there are a lot of Arizonans that do that. Now, what we can do to alleviate some of the cost that Arizonans are having to take because of the high cost of medications is how, we need to take a look at our income tax structure. We need to see how we can lower prices in Arizona, how we can put some guardrails up on some of the programs, the financial programs that we have here in Arizona to kind of alleviate that. Again, this is a federal issue, and we can't just go in and make federal law, as you all know, at a state level. But we can do some things, as I mentioned, to alleviate some of the cost of folks going out to buy their medicine. I'm on medication because I'm a veteran, and there are many times that we have to come out of pocket for medications, and it can be financially stressful. So we need to have solutions and make sure that all Arizonans will be able to get the type of medicines and medications that they need.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Chiquete?
Yeah, also, thinking about that, it's a combination of things, like Nancy said, education for one on where you can get some cheaper prescriptions for people, myself, and younger people that aren't necessarily dependent upon prescription meds. You got big pharma price gouging that at the state level, there really isn't a whole lot we can do about that. But, we could probably implement something for people with, elderly people that have fixed incomes, lower income families, something like that, to provide with some sort of assistance to be able to afford, life-sustaining medications that they are dependent upon.
Okay, thank you. And sort of to round out this conversation about economic concerns in general, survey respondents also said taxes are a primary concern for them. Do you think Arizona's tax codes need to be changed? And if so, how? Mr. Blackman, you're up first for this one.
Well, I was actually, when I was in office, I was a co-sponsor the 2% the flat tax. We could have gone a lot further with putting more guardrails on that piece of legislation because it does affect some lower income folks. And I would like to be able to go back and take a look at how we are doing business regarding taxes. Now, the taxable income in Arizona will vary, as you know. And when we put that structure together for the flat tax, the main purpose to doing that was to align Arizonans with the federal government tax structure. So Arizonans wouldn't be charged when it's time to file their taxes. We found that Arizonans got back more money during tax season based on JLBC reports and data by making sure that Arizona was aligned. Now, it's not a perfect program. We need to go back. We need to put some guardrails on there. We need to protect some of the lower income folks that are in Arizona and make that flat tax not just good for business TPT, but good for all Arizonans.
Okay. Mr. Chiquete, you're up next.
Yeah, I would also say that that flat tax, it affects some of the lower income families in Arizona, and it has a more negative effect on them. So I definitely would like to see something done, like to go and work to try to come up with something that would assist those lower incomes with a better system, a better tax system to provide them with something that would be more beneficial to them.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Hartle.
I absolutely oppose flat tax. I think it is a gift to the rich because if you look at what a lower income person would get relief tax wise in 1 year would be about $250, and then you look at the wealthier people, you're looking into the thousands and above by them. The amount less that they have to pay for taxes. So we did lose about 10% of our state's revenue by doing that. So it really was not a good plan. So that's part of why we have such a huge deficit or debt right now. So I oppose it. And I think it's once again, one of those things that's very, very beneficial to rich people and not so much, a lower income person might think, wow, good, $250 less for my taxes this year than last year. Yeah, but when you look at the overall, who's really benefiting from that, it's not the people who are really hurting. So that's my feeling on that.
Can I rebuttal that, please?
Of course.
Okay, so when I left office, we had a $2 billion surplus. So we didn't have a deficit then. I haven't been in office for the past 2 years, so I can't speak to what's going on in the last 2 years. The years that I was in when we had the flat tax, we left Arizona with a $2 billion surplus. We paid down the retirement. We paid off the rollover, and we were also able to put money in the rainy day fund. To leave Arizonans and the Arizona bank account, if you will, prosperous. So I have to disagree with my opponent when she says that there was a deficit in Arizona because of the 2% flat tax. Again, the 2% flat tax was to align Arizonans with the federal tax code. It did that. It left more money in our treasury, and as a result of that, we had $2 billion left in the surplus.
May I remark to that, please? I'm going by economists that I've read says that we do, and I've read it several, that we lost 10% of our income, our the retail or whatever, our income with that flat tax. And if you look at now, so I'm glad when you left, there was a bunch of money in it, but I know we have this voucher system now, and what they're doing now, because the school funding doesn't come out of that, the public school funding. So it's a separate kind of an issue. And that's where we got the almost $2 billion deficit that we're in right now is because of the voucher system, because it's two separate things. And I imagine we're going to get into this talk later, but there is supposedly a surplus in the public schools, which is kind of not a smart thing because we need that. We need to be paying teachers well and so forth. And then all that money is going to the voucher system, which it does not enter into the school system coffer. So it's a very unequal, disjointed kind of a system. So there is still a huge deficit right now. I'm glad there wasn't when you left, but right now, it's by all reports what we've got going on. there's almost 2 billion. Yeah, I read different things, 1.4 to 2 billion. So that's where we are now. So I'm glad that when you left, but I disagree that I think the flat tax just has been a 10% cut in our income in our state. So
let's go ahead and move on to empowerment scholarship accounts. That's actually a good transition here. What are your overall thoughts on them? Do you support the universal expansion of ESAs, and what changes, if any, would you try to make to them if elected? And for this one, Mr. Chiquete, you're up first.
I do not support universal ESAs. I mean, what we're giving out in ESAs, it harms the taxpayers. They're the ones that end up paying for it. Everybody that's not sending their kid to a private school are the ones that are paying for that. It doesn't need to be taken away completely. There are certain situations where an ESA is beneficial to somebody with learning disabilities or other special needs that need to attend a private school that may be more specialized, have more specialized curriculum for that student. But there definitely needs to be some sort of vetting program, and it needs to be handled with much more care than what we're doing now.
Okay, so you would support an ESA program, sort of what it looked like before universal expansion? Yeah,
I would do that. I would be in support of that before universal expansion came about, to where just anybody can get it. Anybody, there should be a vetting process in order to earn one of those ESAs.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Hartle.
Yeah, I'm not real thrilled about the ESA program. I think it's very much harming our public neighborhood schools. 85% of the people who are taking that money right now have never had their kids in a public school. And so they're taking that. And as we've seen the stories come out, the different kinds of things that they're spending on, they want to buy dune buggies and toys for their kids and things that are not related. And one thing I did find out too, that if a person nowadays takes out one of those vouchers and they have a child with special needs, there is a chance they will lose their federal funding. So, and I heard a person in the legislature discussing this on a program about how she was concerned about that, because your child could lose something like Medicaid or other federal programs if you take that $7,000, and $7,000 is not enough to pay for a year's education in a private school. Actually, about a year's education for one child is about $16,000, and right now our public schools are underfunded for each student by $5,000. So our public schools are very much suffering because of all this money that's going to this. And the problem is that all of that money, 87% of that money, is going to 8% of these schools, and they're the white Christian nationalist schools, and that's where the money's going. And most of us don't want our tax money being spent on a religious school. It's everybody's choice. I went to a Christian school when I was little and wore my little uniform and all that. I have nothing against private schools. I have nothing against Christian or other, religious schools, but our tax money should not be spent on religious schools. We should not be doing that. So I'm very much against that whole thing. So I do want to, make sure that people realize that whole thing about the budget I mentioned earlier about, we come in $4 million under budget. We have reached the 50th place in school funding and school education now in Arizona. So why would we try to come in under budget when we could have used that money? I have two friends who are good friends who are teachers, and they're spending thousands of their own dollars because they're so shorted with things they need for their students. And that shouldn't be happening. We need retention. We need teachers to be paid better and so forth. And we don't need to be dumbing down our children. They are our future. So I can't say that we could get rid of it. Someone said it's like putting the toothpaste back in the tube. So I don't know that we can get rid of the voucher system, but it's not well supervised. And that money right now, I believe it's $360 million that have been taken from that voucher program, and they're not accounting for it yet. It's been put away somehow. So there are so many questions, way more questions than answers, I think, on this program. So I think if it's not taken out completely, it needs to be greatly improved and scrutinized. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Blackman.
So yeah, that's a great question. Our total budget for education K through 12 funding is $7.7 billion. And when we look at the math on that, that's about $343 million that is going into the ESA program, a little over 4.4% of that. We do need to put some guardrails on who's getting the ESAs, how it's being spent. We do need more accountability and transparency with that and how those dollars are being spent. However, again, I'm a guy with solutions. I think that we need to have some parity in this. We can't just take from our public schools and just have a vacuum of dollars that leave the public school system and go into the private or homeschooling. We need to be able to find a way to backfill some of the dollars, particularly the $343 million that's coming out of public schools that's going towards ESA, which I 100% agree with. I think ESAs are a wonderful tool. However, we can't leave behind our public schools. We got some good teachers in public schools, and then some of the kids and families cannot send their kids to a private school because of transportation costs, so on and so forth. So we need to look for ways to be able to put some of that money back in. So we need to take a look at one-time funding reductions in some of the programs that we have, and we can look at state parks. We can look at the higher education adjustments when we are funding our universities. We can take a look at some of the Department of Corrections reductions. As you know, we closed down a prison a couple years ago, and we are actually getting $9.8 million just from that closure. So as Republicans, we need to think outside of the box. Don't forget our public schools. Don't forget about our teachers and our children, and also give parents the ability to choose through accountability and transparency how they use their ESA dollars.
Okay, so just to be clear, you support keeping ESAs universal?
Absolutely, absolutely, with transparency and accountability.
Okay, but however, you would backfill the public school budget by making cuts to other state departments?
Yes,
okay.
Yes.
Thank you. And let's talk about the other side of the equation here. In public schools, high quality teachers often leave Arizona or the profession altogether. How would you propose to keep them in classrooms? And do you have a plan to attract a new generation of teachers here? Ms. Hartle, you're up first for this one.
Well, I think, of course, you have to have incentive pay. You have to pay well. You have to pay commensurate with, similar to other states, benefits. And I think even maybe if we offered some sort of some places offer a credit for childcare. So say if a teacher has small children and needs childcare, that there's some kind of a payment that's made in their salary that goes towards their childcare. So that's a benefit that could help. So just I think really pay to get retention is part of the key. The size of the classrooms, the number of students they have, and making sure they have what they need. And that goes back to the funding. It's, of course, to have what they need for their children to learn. And then also, helping to feed the children that are really quite poor and don't have, the food, making sure, kids are getting fed so they can learn because they don't learn well. So I think so far as teachers, it's mainly, probably even paying, they have to have continuing education courses, making sure you're paying for their continuing education courses and things like that. Benefits and good pay and, incentives like that are, I think, what's going to always attract, teachers. So I think those would be my suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Blackman.
Well, of course, our teachers do a great job, and it's not the fault of the teachers. It's not the fault of the kids. It's the fault of how we are managing some of that money. Now, again, our budget was $7.7 billion. 50 to 60% of that budget went to teacher salary. So we're talking about $4.6 billion went to teacher salary. Now, as a state legislator and as a body, we don't write contracts. We don't facilitate or allocate how much a school district pays their teachers. That is left to the school boards. I get this question often. Teachers are not paid enough money. We have 40 to 50% of our budget, of that budget, it goes to teacher salary. Of course, I'm sure you're familiar with the 20 for 20. Even those dollars that came from the Ducey administration to raise teachers' salaries by 2020 by 20%, it went through, but some of the teachers didn't get those dollars. So the buck really stops at the school districts, the school boards, to get more accountability, to figure out where those dollars are going to, and do we need to, as a legislative body, do direct funding to some of those salaries. If we do that, I'm against big government interfering in local government and the school boards of local government. However, it needs to be real clear about how much money is going towards teacher salaries, where those dollars are being managed at the local level, and that the legislative body does not write contracts for teacher salary. We just don't do that. We have no control of how much a teacher makes.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Cicchetti.
Well, as far as teacher retention, yeah, teacher salaries are low. I don't know what we can do to bring those, but I know we could definitely spend some more money on our schools to help with the changing times of what teachers have to deal with now. Teachers now have to deal with much tougher situations in their classrooms than, say, for when I was in school 30 years ago. We didn't have the distractions of social media and cell phones and the other influences that we have now that are so prominent in our classrooms. Maybe we could find some ways to come up with, to provide the teachers with a better environment, a working environment, some solutions to help ease some of that stress that teachers go through on a day-to-day basis, along with funding for school supplies to help teachers out so they're not having to spend so much on supplying their own classroom with what's needed to get their job done.
Okay. Yes, if you want to say something.
Do you mind if I just throw in a little thought here too? Because yeah, I had read over the course of the last several months that because of the shortage of teachers, then Arizona was going to lower the requirements for teachers and not make sure that they were certified and so forth. And I hope that's not going on, because if we are that low in education and our children are doing so poorly, the last thing we need to do is to hire unqualified people to teach them. So that would be another thought I just kind of wanted to throw in there. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Blackman.
And if I could throw that in also, we do need to be able to keep our teachers. We have a teachers academy at NAU in Flagstaff that puts out some great teachers. However, our incentives are not there to keep these teachers. And it's a shame that we do have teachers that are coming out of pocket to pay for school supplies. Maybe we need to look at affordable housing for teachers. Maybe we need to look at signing bonuses for teachers to keep good teachers and to make sure that they can teach the things that they went to school for, the college for. So there are some things that we can do as a legislative body to keep good teachers. And we do need to raise our rating in comparative in the United States. It is really sad that we are 50 in 50 states. And I have a daughter that goes to high school in Snowflake, and I am very concerned about that. So we have good teachers in Snowflake. However, I am concerned about the rating across the country. We do need to get serious about it. Our kids are important.
Okay, thank you so much. Let's talk about some ballot measures. Will you be supporting Prop 314, which would do a couple things, but the main highlight here is that it would make it a state crime to be in the country illegally and require local law enforcement to enforce that law. And in addition to answering the question on if you'll support that measure, what do you think the state's role should be in border security, if any? And Mr. Blackman, you're up first for that question.
Well, I am for border security. A nation without borders is a nation that's unsecure. We have a tendency just to look at our southern border, and that's a problem. We need to look at our border north. We need to look at our ports. We need to look at what's coming in through the air. And yes, law enforcement should have the authority to check ID if somebody is here unauthorized. The issue is not just folks coming from South America. We have folks that are coming into our country that are bringing fentanyl into our country that we need to stop. We have a high rise of human trafficking. So if we have people that are in our country that are breaking our laws, the law enforcement should have the resources to be able to mitigate some of this, and also be able to protect our communities. So I am in favor of this measure. I'll be voting yes for it because it's needed in Arizona. We have too many folks that are coming across all of our borders that are unchecked, that are in our country, that are not accounted for.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chiquete.
Right now, I'm not so much in favor of that because I feel that it puts a lot more undue duties that on already overstressed local and state law enforcement offices, whereas national security is already handled by the United States Border Patrol. You know, that's where our border security lies. I think that more work needs to be done before we start saying that we can just hand over border security to state and local agencies.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Hartle.
I am against this bill, and I have, and I go back, and I know Mr. Blackman will disagree with me because we disagreed last time we discussed this, but there are many old bills that happened years ago in the 50s, and one was called Operation Wetback, and I know he doesn't like that, but that's what it was called. So these are all kind of racial roundup type of things that are going on, and I don't. It's condescending and dehumanizing to the folks that are coming across the border. 70% are families. It's been tried to be put forth that these people are just mentally insane and just, they're invading and they're criminals and all these kind of things when they really aren't. And what they're coming across for is safety, security, and to get away from harm. The fentanyl and that kind of thing is coming in through the ports of entry. We know that, and the majority of it is not by the immigrants. It's more by people, drug smugglers who are not the immigrants who are looking for help. My concern is, even though this is a softer, gentler, by a gentler name than the 1070 that was back in 2010, a kind of gentler name and everything, it is still a racial roundup and a step toward Project 2025, which we know is on the horizon if we're not careful. And that does call for mass deportations. So I feel the border is under federal control, and I do not want to have our law enforcement, just saying, well, this person looks suspicious. I think we better, pull them over and check them and this kind of thing. I just think it's a vigilantism kind of a thing, and I worry about that and where we're going to go with it. So thank you. That's my feeling.
Okay, Mr. Blackman, you had something to add?
So yeah, if I can rebuttal a little bit, and all due respect to Nancy, and look, between 2019 and 2024, we've had 6.5 million encounters at the border. And that's a problem for me. That's a problem because we have people that are in this country that shouldn't be in the country. Now, I'm against mass roundup myself. I don't think that that's constitutional to do. I think there should be some sort of due process with that. However, we need to understand this. When the federal government is not doing their job, it is the state's responsibility, particularly lawmakers in the state, to be able to protect their citizens. That bill that that's going to the ballot, the best thing about that, and I'm sure my colleagues can agree with this, is that this is going to be left to the voters. This is not something that's going to be left to the legislative body to vote yes or no on. So if Arizonans want more secure borders, secure communities, and to put resources behind law enforcement to be able to protect us, they'll vote yes. If they don't, if they disagree with this legislation, then they'll vote no. But the best thing about this, and this is the best thing about our country, is that this goes to the voters for them to vote yes or no.
Okay, Nancy, and then we'll move on to the next question.
I'm back real quick. I think we all want safe, secure borders. We realize that the immigrants are people that we need in our country and so forth. So I'm not arguing the fact of whether we do all want safe, secure borders and so forth. But I just want to state that to not vilify these people, they are not coming. And you say you want to protect people, and I get that. But what's happening is there's been disinformation and hype about this, that these people are coming over and murdering. Yes, every once in a while somebody does get murdered by an immigrant, but then it's hyped up to make it sound like they're all a bunch of murderers, and they're not. They're families. They're mostly families and so forth, and they have families here. So just so I straighten this out, I think every person in the United States wants a safe, secure border. We want to improve our immigration system. And to discuss the northern border, it's a minuscule problem compared to what the southern border is. So I don't think we really even need to discuss that. You did bring that up, Walt, and I appreciate you bringing it up, but I know it's really not an issue. Our southern border, all 1,954 miles of it, and Arizona has 372 of those miles. We do want to protect it. We want to regulate it, and we want to work for everybody because we need immigrants. They're part of our economy. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's talk about a citizen-led ballot initiative. Will you be supporting the Arizona Abortion Access Initiative? And if so, can you explain in what parameters to abortions, if any, do you believe could be justified? Mr. Chiquete, I believe you're up first for this one.
I believe we need to go back to the pre-abortion ban that we had before, the protections that we had under Roe. Right now, it's say there's a person after 15 weeks that was that seeks abortion for incest or rape or something. They can't do it, and that's just wrong. It's something that we can continue to fight and waste taxpayer money on, or we can just leave it up to the individual. That should be a personal choice made between a woman and her doctor. And I'm sure if you go ask a bunch of men, they would say the exact same thing I would do. If that was my spouse or significant other, I would be in 100% support of her either way. So that's about all I have to say on that issue there.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Hartle, you're up next.
Oh, good. This is my favorite question because I happen to have been a women's health nurse practitioner for 27 of the 37 years I was in the medical field. So I want to just kind of straighten out some misconceptions, first of all, because there's been so much disinformation, intentional distortion of facts put out there just with the intention of horrifying people about the truth. I want to say, a lot of people say, I don't like abortion. Let me clarify, no one likes abortion, okay? As a medical provider doing it, I didn't like abortion. The patient having an abortion doesn't like abortion. So get that even just out of your mind. It's never done for fun. It's done for real reasons, and none of which are actually any of our business, to be honest. When we had Roe v. Wade, it protected a woman's privacy and her right to make her decisions. We need to go back to that. What this new provision has, this new thing that's on the ballot, the 139, it says that the viability is based on each pregnancy to decide that, because each pregnancy is different. So instead of putting an arbitrary number of weeks, 15 weeks, women don't even get genetic testing until 15 to 20 weeks. So you might not even know that you have a baby with something that's an anomaly that's not compatible with life. So to make that decision for her is not fair. So I want to say something too about this whole, they're saying they're ripping babies out up until the time that the baby would have been born. That is just a total fallacy. Number one, a pregnancy lasts 40 weeks. A late-term abortion would be done after 21 weeks. An abortion is never done at 7, 8, 9 weeks. I'm sorry, weeks. I'm saying weeks instead of months. But it's never done at the time of birth, or they say it's even after birth. That's murder. That's never done in any state. So I can't even believe people are even saying that. But like Kevin said, the decision is up to the mother, her medical provider, and her maker, if she believes in a maker. And I would like to say that just pregnancy itself has inherent risk. 33 women out of 100,000 are going to die just from pregnancy complications. So just pregnancy in itself is a risk. So a woman should be able to decide how she wants to approach this. And I want to just have one last consideration for you. If you had a daughter or a granddaughter, beloved person, who's all happy about pregnancy, and all of a sudden things are going wrong, and she's in the hospital bleeding out, or an intense infection, and probably going to die, are you going to choose the embryo? Does the embryo have the choice over her? Is that going to be fine with you, that you're going to say, sorry, you have to die? And the really ridiculous part of all this is that fetus or embryo or whatever we've got growing at that point is not going to live anyway. If she goes, or even if she doesn't and they take it out, it's not going to live. So I don't even get the logic in that. I want to make one last point. When you have a Jehovah's Witness come to the hospital for a C-section or whatever, they sign a paper saying that they will not take blood products because it's against their religion. And we respect their choice. So if she's bleeding out and we say, are you sure you don't want blood products? We can change your decision. No, if she wants to, then we respect that choice that she's going to die, even though we could save her. So why can't a woman who's bleeding out and dying have the choice to live over an embryo? So that is what I would like to bring up. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Blackman.
I'm glad that Nancy brought up the daughter issue, because I do have a daughter, and I am concerned about that. And that's why I am for the exceptions of life of the mother, rape or incest, when that happens. And God forbid that happen to anyone. And I am for that. However, I come at this at a different angle. I understand it is a woman's choice. I understand that only a woman can talk about this, and I respect that. However, I am coming at this as a leader in the Black community. So since Roe v. Wade, we have had 63 million abortions across the country since Roe v. Wade. Now, in that, 20 million of those abortions have been in Black communities. Our population in the Black community should be hovering around 19%. We are at 13% of the population. There are more Planned Parenthoods in Black communities than there are in any other community in the United States. Black communities, Black women are systematically targeted by Planned Parenthood. The data is there. We have a decrease in our community, the Black community. Now, I understand this is a woman's choice, and I understand what's on the ballot, which I do not agree with. I am a pro-life advocate. However, again, I am coming at this as a perspective of as a Black American who has talked to folks in the Black community, talked to women that have gone through abortions, and has wrestled with this from a perspective of the Black community. Now, I can't speak for the rest of the communities, because I'm sure that the Caucasian community, the Hispanic community, whatsoever out there, ethnic background, they have their own set of demographics and data to support this. However, in the Black community, this is a problem. Abortion is a problem. We need to look for alternatives, like easier ways to adoptions, easier way to give mothers the care that they need, holding fathers accountable, making sure that we have the facilities and the resources to help mothers go through this. We can't just say no abortions and don't help that baby down the road or help that mother. So that's where I am, and that's the perspective that I come from. I know Nancy probably won't agree with that. However, that's why I like her, because we have these spirited debates.
Yes, I'll let you rebuttal, Nancy, but just to be clear, Mr. Blackman, your stance is you would not support abortions at all, except in the case of rape or incest? Or
rape, incest, and in the health of the mother. If the mother is facing life or death situations, those are the exceptions that I will accept that on.
Okay, Nancy, if you want to quickly rebuttal there.
2 points. First of all, see, the interesting thing is the reason that those Planned Parenthood type clinics are in those neighborhoods is because there is a need there. Black women have a much higher risk of pregnancy complications and a much higher risk of dying from pregnancy, period. They're 77 out of 100,000. If you look at just across the board, it's 33 out of 100,000. If you look at Black women, it's 70 or 77 out of 100,000. They have twice the risk of dying just in any pregnancy. So it isn't, you make it sound like they put some kind of a new boutique in that area and they're just rushing over to get their abortions. That isn't the way it works. They go there because of the need. They put those clinics where there is need, in low income areas where there's a need. And I want to say one of the second point here is the problem with saying, well, it's to save the life of the mother. But what's happening is the medical providers, when the woman gets to the hospital, they don't know where they can draw the line. And to prove that it was going to be life or death for her. And that's where these women are dying. And we're seeing it on the news a lot of these women who are dying because the medical provider feels like they don't know if they're protected. And they know they're going to either lose their license and maybe go to jail. for it if somebody accuses them of doing it too early. So what they've done with all this is created all these gray areas, and women are dying because of it. So those are my final statements. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Blackman, quickly.
I appreciate Nancy's response on that. However, let's be clear about this. 20 million Black lives have been lost. 20 million. Okay. I also want to point this out. The founder of Planned Parenthood, Margaret Sanger, and you probably knew I was going to take it here, actually said, and this is quoted from her, we don't want the Black population to know that we want an extinction. We want to do away with the Black population. We know that has been said, and we know that the Democrats at one time supported this proponent of Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood is placed in Black communities not just because they are low potential or they are low poverty rates. Because by saying that, you're actually saying that everyone who is a Black person lives in a low poverty rate community. And that's just not true. That's not accurate. And that's just being disingenuous. If your community, the white community, lost 20 million due to an abortion, and if there were a significant amount of Planned Parenthoods in your community where you live, rock throws away, and there are 20 million, you should be at 19% of the population and you were at 13%, I think you would be having a different type of argument on this. So we just can't put it in that box that it is just because they are a higher rate of health problems. It is a problem with poverty. It is more to that, because this is something that has been going on in this country since the inception of Planned Parenthood, since it came on board with Margaret Sanger, who said that she wanted to extinguish the Black population, that we were weeds and we needed to be cut out. These are true statements. You know it and I know it. And this is something that is a problem in the Black community. So with all due respect, Nancy, we're going to have to agree to disagree on that.
I'll agree. I'll agree to disagree with you. But I think your data, there are 930,160 abortions done in the U.S. in 2020. I don't know where you're getting your 19 million, but that's okay. We will never agree on this, I think. But thanks for the discussion.
Yes,
okay.
ma'am.
Let's move on here to groundwater management. Yay. Very crucial subject.
Great segue.
I love talking to Nancy. She's awesome with it. It makes me think.
Of course, that's what debates are for. What improvements or reforms would you advocate for in the state's approach to groundwater management to address current challenges and also future needs? Ms. Hartle, I think you're up for this one.
Oh, water. That's the one I just looked up at the end here. Water is one of those difficult ones. Groundwater management, first of all, one of the things that comes to my mind, first of all, is, the aquifers and the way they're draining the aquifers. So we have a really big problem here in Arizona with the Saudis who are leasing land and indiscriminately pumping water out of our aquifers to absolutely flood these alfalfa fields. And Katie Hobbs did decline to renew some of those leases now, because what they're doing is they're raising this alfalfa to ship back to their cattle back in Saudi. So they're sucking it dry. They're not recharging the aquifers, and it's a significant problem in Arizona. I've just recently started working with a woman who used to work with the water companies, and she's given me a lot of information. So I'm not super well versed on it yet, so it's something I'm studying up on. But I do know that from the moment I started my campaign, I've had constituents talk to me about how irritated they are that they're doing this. We've had, I think it was Eloy, one town in Eloy that sunk by 4 feet because the aquifer was so sucked dry. And then there was a town in Cochise County, and I can't remember the name of it. Just recently, they said sunk by 2.5 feet. And in talking to this person from the water company, she said, "Oh, we've had land sink 20 feet." So this is a huge problem because these aquifers need to be recharged with clean water. They aren't an endless supply, and they can go dry. And I'm sure Kevin, when he talks about, he'll probably discuss something with copper mining, which is totally his bailiwick, not mine. So I won't go there, but I know that we need copper and we need mining and we have to do it correctly and everything. But mining does have a problem with our water sources. So those are my thoughts on the groundwater situation. But I will say that Arizona, one thing I do know, is doing supposedly one of the best jobs in the country on water reclamation. So that's a good thing. But we all are worried about water in Arizona. So I'll end there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Blackman, you're up next.
I had a lawmaker one time that told me that whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting in Arizona. And I got to agree on this. I think the panel will pretty much be in line with this. We do have a water issue, even though we do have the 100-year water act, and we also have the drought contingency plan. It needs to be, I guess, updated. The problem that I see in this, and I'm not sure if Kevin lives in Pinal County or what. However, he may know or see this firsthand. Is that, for example, Maricopa will build. Okay, and then they'll go after the water. Instead of seeing if there's water out there, Maricopa County, seeing if there's water out there before they build. I know that's a problem in Pinal County, and that I know that because of that, we are losing some of our water to Maricopa County. The second thing is we need to get a hold of the federal government and make sure that the state government is not going to meter some of these wells, these private wells that we have. Our aquifers are drying up. I was actually part of a Zoom meeting today that actually talked about the water issues in Arizona. That has been a constant fight in the Arizona House and Senate and the executive. And this is something that has no political lines. There's no RD that has the win at this. This is an Arizona problem. Arizonans are facing this every day, and we need to have some good solutions, regardless of what side of the aisle it comes from, to protect our water and protect Arizonans. So the droughts that we see are not. We're not going to be fighting down the road because of that. So I'm looking for help in this, and we just need some good solutions for this.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chiquete.
Yeah, so Nancy did touch on mining as far as using water, and she's right. Mining does take quite a substantial amount of water, but a lot of the water that's used in mining is reclaimed. It's a lot of it's reclaimed water. But one of the big things that we have going on right now in Arizona is the build for rent thing that's going on. And that is a huge issue, because when you build for rent and you do not subdivide the property, you do not have to have the 100-year water supply for that community that is required, which Arizona is the only state that does this, that requires you show proof of a 100-year water supply before building. When you build for rent, you do not have to do that, which, as Mr. Blackman said, Pinal County is experiencing huge growth. Same with Maricopa County. And a lot of these places are build for rent builders that are building these huge places for housing of individuals, which, because of the growth that we're seeing in these areas, they need the housing, but still we can't afford to be so frivolous with our water supply and not taking things to the if we keep going with this rate, with that unaccounted for use of water, we won't have enough to last the 100 years that we need.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to see if I can squeeze in one more question here before we close out, just because I really like this question. Republicans currently hold a one-seat advantage in each chamber of the legislature. Regardless of how November's elections play out, what will your approach to bipartisanship, be if elected? One voter asked us if you plan to address the us versus them mentality at the legislature. Mr. Blackman, you're up first for this one.
Well, as we've seen, that doesn't work in Arizona. we have not only a party that's divided within our own party, we have a state that's divided when we're talking political lines. In order for us to get any type of good legislation done, we are going to have to work with others. And in my party in particular, we have folks that really don't want to do that. Now, in a one-seat majority, and I've served in the session where there is a one-seat majority, when we're talking about tax policy, or we're talking about lowering taxes, we're talking about funding schools, building roads, so on and so forth. Not every Republican is going to be on board with some of those initiatives, and there will be Democrats on board with funding our schools or paying for roads or our public safety, so on and so forth. So we are going to have to learn how to work together. If we don't do that, we will continue to see what we are seeing now. So it's important that we have the type of people down there at the Arizona House that in some of these issues are going to put the partisan aside and work for Arizonans. Before I started, we were talking, and I said, whoever gets elected, you're just not going to represent Republicans or Democrats or independents. You're going to represent Arizonans, and not just the people in our district. We're going to be representing Arizona and Arizonans. We need leadership down there that understands that can move Arizona forward.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chiquete.
My passion is the people. Not only am I a minor, but for 20 years I've been a union member, and for 7 of those last years I've been an officer and a shop steward and a representative. So I know how to put my own personal wants or needs, set those aside, and give the people, the constituents, what they want, what they need. That's what we need to focus on, is the needs of Arizonans, the needs of the people in our district. And I am 100% for that, and I'm not gonna let a person's party preference get in the way of that.
Thank you so much. And Mrs. Hartle, there she is.
I'm back. My dog is like tearing the slider door off, but anyway, that's all right. I'm back. So I'll repeat, I'm sorry, working in the legislature and so forth. I'm so glad tonight that I've not heard one conspiracy theory or anything. We've had a really reasonable debate, and I'm really glad of that. I look forward to working, just like I used to all of my life, to get along with people and not worry about they were Democrat, Republican, or whatever, to work for the better of all the people in Arizona. And that's what I'd like to do. I'm used to doing that. I've worked with the public my entire life, so I can plan to continue to do that, and I will work hard. As long as people are, we've had some threatening letters around my neighborhood here and so forth, and people have really gone off the rails, which is really unfortunate. I hope we can get back to sanity and, work together because we are the United States of America, and let's try to keep that. So I will work with others. I gladly work with others. We have to be reasonable and stop the hate.
Okay. Thank you so much. So this brings us to our closing comments. We're going to do reverse alphabetical order. So that means you're first, Ms. Hartle, for a closing comment.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you again, Nicole and Tom and Brian and the people that are behind the scenes and everything. What I'd like for people to do that are listening is ask yourself what kind of a world you want to leave for your children, your grandchildren, and so forth. I think over the course of the last 9 years, I've heard more conspiracy theories than I could ever stand to think of. So I didn't serve for 20 years in the United States Air Force, or 37 years, to stand back and watch our rights being stripped away. So I will not stand for it, and I will work hard to prevent that. So I want people to be really beware of who they're voting for, for this coming November election, because we are at a critical time period. There's some scary things out there. So I just want you to understand what I stand for. And I stand for the individual rights, women over embryos, children over guns, books over bans, voting over suppression, planet over pollution, public neighborhood schools over the vouchers to the rich, and freedom over fascism, and obviously democracy over dictatorship. I promise to be a person who stands for all of those. I stand for civil rights, civic rights, civil rights, human rights, and animal rights. And I'm a big dog lover, and I want everybody to thrive in Arizona, and I will always put people over power. So So vote for Hartle and Cicchetti. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Mr. Cicchetti, you're up next.
Yeah, thank you for everybody that was here and that attended today. It was great being able to have these discussions with everybody. I just want to remind everybody, when you go to vote, think about who you're voting for. Think about who's going to represent your way of life. Think about who's there. What do you have in common with them? And having said that, I'm a native Arizonan. I'm a blue collar man. I'm a 30-year miner. On top of running for office, I still keep up my 40+ hour a week job. I work 48 or 68 hours or 60 hours a week. Those are my weeks. And I do this. I'm for the people. I am a man of the people. That's what I am. That's what I am looking out for. I'm for jobs, education, women's rights, and everyone's rights for that matter. I want to see rural Arizona prosper. I'd like to see rural communities get the help that they need for medical care, infrastructure, roads, internet, just the basic needs. All over throughout the nation, rural communities are dying, and the ages of those rural communities are going up. They're not going down because we don't have what the people want anymore. And with my district being comprised of many rural communities, I feel like I'm a person that can represent these communities well, and that I'm a person that people can they can relate to. So please keep that in mind, and check Cicchetti come November.
Thank you so much. And Mr. Blackman.
So I want to thank Clean Elections, Nicole, Kevin, Nancy. Great debate. I think we need to have more of these types of discussions because we're all Arizonans. Look, I have a vision not just for our district, but for Arizona and Arizonans. And that vision is to move us forward. We need the type of state that folks do feel safe in their communities. We need the type of state that legislators are held accountable, that we have a budget that is not blown up, and that we are educating our children, and that we are able to have the type of life that we are not struggling to put food on the table, or we're not struggling to buy medicines that we need. We need the type of leadership that I can offer. I'm one of the few legislators that actually dove into criminal justice reform here in Arizona. I was one of the few legislators that were able to get 60 members on board on 80% of the criminal justice legislation that I ran in Arizona. When we're talking about earned release credit, we're talking about education, we're talking about giving basic needs for female women that are incarcerated. So I have proven that I can bring people together. Being the chairman of judiciary, I worked across the aisles, and it was important to be able to do that because criminal justice doesn't have an R or a D behind it. It has a person. With many issues that we have in Arizona, I know that I can lead us forward. I know that I can do that in our district, no matter who you vote for. Come 35 days. Your vote is important. So I'm asking you, vote your values, vote what you believe in, vote how you want to see your family in the future of Arizona. Again, I want to thank Clean Elections. I want to thank the candidates that are running. This has been a long, hard election race. And my hat is off to everyone, particularly in our district, who ran. And no matter who wins, I think it's time for us to all get on one team and work together for Arizonans. So thank you. And I appreciate you hosting this tonight.
Thank you so much. This concludes our debate. To our candidates, we thank you so much for participating. To the voters, we thank all of you who took the time to watch the debate and inform yourselves before the November 5th general election. We encourage you to visit azcleanelections.gov for official, accurate voting information. Thank you so much.